Hey, everybody, welcome to Game Breaking News with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from GiantBomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. On this episode, we're going to be talking about another major Xbox game jumping to PS5 and what is going on with Metroid Prime 4. We have Shawn, Shawn McDowell on the show, so it's going to be a good one. Let's get right into it with Shawn McDowell. Shawn, how are you doing?
Good, Jeff. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. Thanks for bringing in the only Irish person in games media that you know to do the news with you today. I really appreciate it.
That's right. I think I have a tiny bit of Irish, but what much more Scottish, and I just couldn't think of a single other one. So
Nah, who can say
yeah,
what they're doing?
I think we have enough here. I think we're good. I think we
Yeah,
represent here, doing a good job. How you been, Shawn?
I'm pretty good, Jeff. By the way, I want to say I'm happy to be one of the first few guests here on Game Breaking News, a
That's
show that
right.
is apparently completely different from Game S Mornings, as I saw in one
Don't
comment.
even know what that is. Yeah.
I don't know if that person watched the show. Um, How much was the title like? How much was NBA Street Volume 2 kicking around the back of your head when you approved this title?
Always, just pretty
Oh,
much
it's
constantly. Yeah.
okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, this is a game breaker. As soon as someone said like game breaking news, I'm like, well, that's got like so many like in meanings in there that I enjoy. That I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, let's go for that. That one
it works.
totally works. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. What you been up to? You been playing anything? You keeping up on the latest releases in the video game industry?
I have maybe some of which we'll talk about in the near future here.
That's right.
I've also been playing. I talked about number one a little bit on BCR on Friday, but I've since fired up Crazy Taxi 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, how much have you played Crazy Taxi 3, Jeff?
I have not touched the triple yet.
Exactly. Most people haven't, but
Yeah.
I found out that people, I talked about Sonic Unleashed recompiled being a really cool way to look, regardless of the game's quality, which we all know is not very high. The fact that games are being preserved by the fans, gaming history is not lost is very cool. Crazy Taxi 3 actually one of those games as well. People have
Uh-huh.
modded the PC version to be much more modern, and playing that game 60 FPS, like even on a Steam Deck and everything in native res, that might be the best Crazy Taxi experience. I might have to
Huh.
send some
Okay.
files your way. It's really cool.
Yeah, I would like that. I've definitely have had some time with Crazy Taxi. It was never like the thing. I never fell in love with it the way some people did. But I bet if this is like the best version, I'm like, okay, I could find something to truly fall in love here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would
you
love to see that.
can a big one. Like it's such a small thing, but the fact that you can boost in reverse gives
Ooh,
you total control of your car at all times. Combined with the jump that they added, it's like it's fun. It's great.
yeah,
It's just
yeah. No,
arcadey goodness.
sounds good. Sounds excellent. Yeah, we some new releases still coming out. Although I think after a couple here, it does seem like it might slow down a little bit. I suppose by the time we take that breath, Switch 2 will be like front and foremost in our minds because we'll be pretty close to that direct in a
Yeah.
matter of weeks
It
now.
it depends on what you're into, because like if you're into RPGs and stuff, then there is like I have almost one thing on my calendar every day
True.
through May. So
Right.
yeah.
There's still plenty happening for sure. Let's explain what we do here, though. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for game breaking news or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's break some gaming news, starting with Starfield on PS5. Still not confirmed, but new evidence emerges. This is from Eddie McCoo at GameSpot. Bethesda's 2023 RPG Starfield is not ruled out for PS5, but it also hasn't been announced for Sony's system like some of Bethesda's other games have, including Doom: The Dark Ages and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, a listing on Bethesda's modding website might suggest a PS5 edition of the game is coming. Reddit user $99man shared a finding from YouTube user 510 Deshawn,
Ooh.
Deshawn, who discovered that the Bethesda Creation Kit website for Starfield was updated with the PlayStation logo sitting
Uh,
alongside the logos for PC and Xbox. However, the Starfield Creation Kit hub does not allow players to choose PlayStation as a platform in the filter. despite the logo appearing on one of the mods pages. It's possible to tweak it, or to tweak the URL to force the filter to show mods listed for PlayStation for a period of time today and that was March 14th. This displayed one result for the mod listed for PlayStation. However, that has since been removed. Um, a couple things here. This is a website that could just be incorrectly showing something. They would have these tags for PlayStation for the other games that do support mods on PlayStation, right, Shawn? But this
Yeah.
game's coming to PS5. It just is. All these games
Yeah,
are coming to PS5.
that's the thing. Not to give the speech again, because I feel like it happens every time on this show,
Yeah, I
but
like it.
the console war is over. Like
Yep.
that's just the way things are now. And Microsoft's multi-platform strategy involves PlayStation. That's what it is. So their games, whether it's after an exclusivity period or it's a multiplayer game showing up day one potentially, their games are going to show up on PlayStation. That's just how we're doing things nowadays. And so, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that Starfield would be coming over. I think there's been speculation and rumblings and all kinds of things for a good long time now. And maybe this is a bit of a smoking gun that like it could be
Sure.
sooner than we think if they have at least like some marketing stuff floating around on the back end somewhere. Like they're starting to think about this because the port is starting to materialize, right?
Yeah, and it's like, I try to think about the timing here, Shawn, where it's like, we're mid March, which is horrifying to think time's already flown by that
Oh
much. But
Christ.
yeah, we're already mid March. We I think safely can assume if Microsoft has not confirmed that they'll have some sort of summer Game Fest equivalent, they'll have their showcase like they typically do around that time that E3 would have happened.
Yeah.
So I begin to think, okay, well, is there time between now and then now and then for them to announce like something like this is happening very soon, and they have Indiana Jones still coming to PS5, and I don't think they've confirmed a date, although we've had leaks of a date, which I think put it into next month or something like that. I don't know. It just seems like Microsoft has plenty to talk about before they even get to that summer show, and maybe this could show up there and be launching in the summer on PS5. Again, that just wouldn't surprise me.
Right, exactly. It's more of a matter of when at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mentioned looking at my calendar, and April is that month where we start to see the packed spring of Xbox happen, where they got South of Midnight. They have the a marketing deal with Claire Obscure, and then they have Doom in May. So I would assume that if this is happening soon, it wouldn't be that soon. It would
Right.
probably be like June or something,
Yeah, late. It could
or
get announced.
later.
It could get announced soon and then come out late summer, right? Yeah.
Or it could be a thing where whatever SGF or not E3 thing they do, they announce it, and then
Yeah.
hey, guess what? It's available digitally in 2 weeks, and maybe we have a physical version as a partner thing or whatever down the road or whatever. I would not be surprised at this point.
Yeah. This is something that they probably do pair up with a hey, we have really spruced this game up. I hesitate to use the word fix. They probably wouldn't use that, but yeah, like fix the game up and then spruce it up in some other ways for
As much as you
Xbox.
can with Starfield.
Yeah, as much as you can for Starfield, a game that I think is okay-ish. It is the kind of thing where okay, they will re-present it to the existing audiences and say, "Here's some free updates," and then you put that all into a bundle with that DLC that everyone seemed to hate except for Greg Miller, and you release that as a definitive edition for PlayStation 5. And there's probably a definitive boxed edition for Xbox as well. And if that's the case, I guess that could be something that comes out closer to holiday if they're trying to time it up with all of these other updates that they might be doing to the game. Something we
Yeah.
see all the time. But yeah, I mean, I'll say it again, Shawn. I remember when the conversation going into Starfield was, "Hey, is this game going to come to PS5 ever?" And I was told and I was shown like paperwork of like how they did the math of how we decide which games we're going to do that with. And they're like, for PlayStation, for Starfield, and for a lot of these bigger Bethesda games, no, we're never going to put that on PlayStation because we're looking at it and this is going to help grow Game Pass. And that was their thinking just a couple of years ago. And boy, that has shifted a lot. They have changed their
That's
mind.
when they thought there was growth to be had with Game
That's
Pass,
right.
which, as they've seen recently, as we've all seen recently, that has seemingly plateaued. When Microsoft stops updating you on raw numbers, that's when you know that things
Yeah.
are below expectations. We saw it with the Xbox One, and now we're seeing that with Game Pass. So it's not like dire situation or
No.
anything like that. It's just, oh, we didn't see the growth that we wanted to, so let's not like worry shareholders and everything like that by potentially having news out there that, oh, Game Pass is dead and everything. You know, you get all the YouTube headlines and everything. They just want to avoid all that. But I do think it's funny to think of the sprucing up. Some people can't stand that. That theoretically the best version of a game could be on
Sure.
PlayStation coming out of Xbox, which I get because you know it's a Microsoft game. How is it better on the PlayStation? But you can't have devs just ignore the fact that they've
And they
been
wouldn't.
given more time to
Yeah.
work on something. So like if you get the porting job done, quote unquote, early, and you have extra time to say, hey, you know what, let's optimize things on the back end so that we can, you know, get the dynamic res higher at times and stuff like that. It's always going to be small things like that, I
Yeah.
think, usually, but it's kind of a funny thing to think about, right?
Right. Yeah. And, you know, it's pretty easy to like to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's working on the game, right? They're not Xbox people, they're Starfield people. They're the people that were like spent years working on this game.
There are
And
people who want to have a job, you
yeah,
know,
and they're
so
gonna
they're working.
right. And there are probably people who are passionate about making sure the game can be as good as it possibly can. So when they have
Right.
access to like a PS5 Pro, they'll take advantage of that.
Yeah.
You know, again, a lot of that stuff will get back ported. That's not the right word, but get moved back over to Xbox when they do it for the PlayStation. But it's you're right. Like sort of the definitive experience could end up on PlayStation. People could be weird about that. You get to play it early, years early. So just look at it that way.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this next little batch of headlines. A lot of Star Wars stuff to talk about, kind of from different angles. Let's start with this first one. Saber Interactive reminds us it is still working on Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. This is from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. Last week, we were hit with a bit of a shocker as Saber Interactive and Games Workshop announced Warhammer 40K Space Marine 3. While that project is years away, it did cause some to question what Saber was up to with other projects such as Jurassic Park Survival, Toxic Commando, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. The KOTOR remake has had a turbulent development to say the least, and while there was a point where it seemed the project would just get canned, Saber Interactive confirmed last year that work was still ongoing. Now, more recently, Saber Chief Executive Officer Tim Willits has reassured us once more. He basically went on Twitter and said, everything that we have talked about is still in development. We will share information on upcoming games when we have something cool to share. You know, I the questions really came from, and I'll take responsibility for that. I was like, hey, yeah, that I heard that Sony wants nothing to do with this thing, so that game's effectively done. And then, you know, most of that I still think is true, where it's like Sony has backed away from this thing. Sony doesn't seem to want anything to do with it, and so like that version of the game is done. But you know, Saber Interactive, and that was not even the original developer when that game got announced, right? Who was it? It was Aspire, right? Aspire was going to work on it, uh,
Oh.
and that got moved over to Saber. Saber is like seems like they're going to continue working on this and have something. What it's actually going to end up looking like, we'll have to wait and see. But no, they continue to say no. We're going to actually see this thing through, and I definitely believe them now. At this point, they seem pretty intent on doing that. But boy, I'm like, well, what is that thing even going to look like? Saber has a lot of games in the works. They are always making a ton. They have that
Oh yeah.
Roadcraft game coming out later this year. That demo really did very well during the Steam Next Fest. But I actually forgot about Jurassic Park Survival, which is that action adventure game that they made. And then, you know, they announced Space Marine 3. They got a ton happening. I don't know. When do you think we see Knights of the Old Republic remake? Any idea?
Oh, no clue at this point
Yeah.
because it's one of those games where it's been uh barely talked about so much and tossed around a little bit that I assume, even when they tell us otherwise, I just keep assuming this game is dead. But
Yeah.
yeah, they keep reiterating, no, 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 work is happening on this thing, and so I, I'll take them, you know, at their word, and yeah, it's still going. It's just always a little surprising that this project is still a thing because it does feel like if we haven't heard anything substantial, we haven't even seen like, you know, a a new trailer or anything like even conceptual at this point, not even like some art or something like new key art or anything. Yeah, I guess it would just be in early development if it is still happening. Maybe it did get tossed around a bunch before finally real work has begun on it, and that's why we haven't seen anything at this point. But yeah, I keep getting surprised that this project is still alive. Frankly,
Yeah, I think like I'm trying to remember the exact timeline and how we were hearing about things, but in my head, when I try to remember, when we were discussing this, when it was still under Aspire and Sony was, hands on and giving money to the project and like I think responsible for actually publishing it. All things I don't think are happening, at least not now. Maybe they come back around at the end of the project. They're like, now we're happy with it again. Here's us like returning to the state where things used to be. But when it originally got announced, I think the timing I was hearing about was like this thing wouldn't show up till like 2027. And that's before all that stuff went
wait,
off
when
the
it
rails.
first got announced?
Yeah, like the kind of I was originally hearing. I
Oh
mean,
man.
or that could have been in the months later, right? The months following
Well,
that, as
even still, yeah, I was trying to get the timeline straight. 2021 is
yeah,
when this was
2020.
announced.
Oh no, no, I don't. Wait, is this announced in 2021? Because
First revealed at the Sony PlayStation Showcase event September 9th, 2021.
yeah, so I think it was like maybe it was like it was 2025 I was hearing, but I'm like I think it's 2027 is what I originally heard. So it's like I mean, like we don't know what the scale of this thing is under
I
Saber with
suppose.
yeah. So it's like we did. I think we did hear that they were planning to, and again, this was under Aspire. Things could have changed, like rework the combat to be maybe more actiony, more real time. More real time than the game is.
Right.
Um, and it's like okay, so yeah, they are planning to make substantial changes to the way this game works. But is that and really they have to like remake everything because this is not a game you could sort of just staple new visuals onto. So they were going to have to probably rework everything from the very foundation up through the final presentation. And so yeah, it was going to take a long time. But it's like if 2027 was the timeline originally, like what is it now? We really don't know.
Yeah. And the
Oh, wrong button.
the thing about the devs who are or have worked on this with Aspire always seemed like a weird choice because their expertise is in ports and like light remastering. So
Yeah,
for them to do a remake that fans would expect always seemed odd. And now we have Saber, which Saber has certainly done larger projects, but they have a lot in development at any given point in time, like I said. But again, I'm still not sure it's the kind of level that people are expecting out of this game.
yeah.
So
I mean, I think when we talk about Knights of the Old Republic, we're talking about BioWare. We're talking about Electronic Arts.
yeah,
Like overseeing that, I guess that was
the
that
biggest
before.
names in gaming.
Yeah, uh-huh. Well, I mean, like at least like had them on a certain pedigree.
Well, I meant that seriously, by the way.
Oh,
That
okay.
was not a joke. Like
Dude,
legitimately, like huge names associated with
yes,
this franchise.
with
That like,
huge budgets and being able to
yeah,
support a massive AAA release in this 2025 to 2027 period.
I love that you assume I'm joking about BioWare in the end. I can't blame you at this point, Jeff. But
I'm just
yeah.
so used to the sarcasm. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, totally. Sean's right. Screw those guys. All right. Well, let's stick with Star Wars here. Star Wars Hunters has been shut down or is going to be shut down. They announced it.
Aw.
This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. Zynga has announced that it will be shutting down Star Wars Hunters, despite the game having come out only last summer. It's not even been out a year. I think it's actually just 9 months after it came out. The free-to-play PvP arena combat game was released on June 4th on Nintendo Switch, iOS, and Android, and was set between the events of Star Wars Episodes 6 and 7. It was okay. It had a Metacritic of 57, so not
Ugh.
great. Yes, but it's like I think most of that was just like I don't know. It's got a really obnoxious tone. I think that did not help it.
Oh,
This
were
game
they going
was
for like the Fortnite crowd and not landing, or?
yeah, I mean, like somewhere between Fortnite and Funko Pop, like
Oh, I see. Okay.
yeah. The character designs they were strong in terms of there's a lot of character here,
Uh huh.
uh, but I think one of them is like an Ewok riding around like a mini ATST, and it's just
Okay.
very. I I thought a lot of that stuff is fine. It's for kids, and it nailed that stuff to be like, oh, we can try to get kids' attention, except for kids did not actually pay attention, and no one else did either. No one played this game. No one
No.
ever talked about this
You,
game. I talked about it a couple times
I was gonna
on.
say you enjoyed it a decent
Yeah,
amount, didn't you?
yeah, it's fine. Like I thought it was a pretty good one of those. A mobile first online shooter. You could see very like you could imagine that being the kind of thing where it's, oh, okay. A lot of the gameplay and the competitiveness is a facade there to get you onto the treadmill of, well, sure, I'm in there and I'm shooting people, but really I'm not killing anyone until I get these upgrades, the way that like a Clash Royale works or something like that. It's not that. It was a just straight up cool shooter, very like Overwatch light, like very Overwatch light.
Okay.
Um, but like I said, no one played this thing, and they were gonna release it on Steam, and it's like they're not even gonna give that a shot now. They are
Mm,
pulling, like they announced it for Steam, and it's like, okay, so this is one of these live service games where they tried something a bit different. Had they put it on Steam, I don't think that would have changed its fate all that much. But I also feel like it's a little unfair to be like, hey, let's judge the performance of this live service game on that is like a shooter. If you don't put it on Steam, did you really give it a chance? I don't know.
yeah, with a shooter in particular, you want to put on as many
Yeah,
platforms as possible. And some, I guess some don't have to. Call of Duty Mobile's doing perfectly fine.
sure.
But this is I talked about game preservation at the top a little bit, and this is one of those things that's a bit of a bummer because it's two things here. With live service games, those are ephemeral. Those just float away when
Yep.
the company that owns them decides that they aren't performing well enough. And mobile games as well. Some single player games are preserved, whether officially, which like Mega Man X Dive and Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. That's what it's called, right?
Yep. Pocket
I,
Camp.
I, I like seeing those games get like definitive editions that the company just says, yeah, give us $20. It's just a regular ass game now. That's really cool. But that's also a thing that this game had going against it with the focus on mobile and handheld and everything like that. It was going to be one that they could easily just toss away if it wasn't doing well enough. And that always sucks because, again, regardless of a game's quality, it's a bummer to see it just go away. And I want to play it now just to see what it is because eventually you won't be able to, maybe forever and
Yep.
always. So that's a
Yeah, I
bummer.
think I'll make it something set up for Grubb's gimmicks before this thing goes away for good.
There you go.
Let's see. When did they say it was going to shut down for good? Let's
October
see.
1st. So
Yeah,
we got
October
we got
1st.
time.
Got some time. The game will remain playable until October 1st. The final
Usually,
content update will be April 15th, tax
oh,
day.
that's why they're announcing it so soon. I was gonna say that's quite a bit of notice for a shutdown. Usually a shutdown
Yeah.
happens like within a month if it's happening or something.
Yeah, God, it feels like that's almost because there's some like contract there. They have to like
Mm,
keep it going for a certain amount of time or something like that. You're right. That's quite some time.
yeah.
The factors worth considering here. Granimus in chat says, "Are we Star Wars out?" Absolutely, without a doubt. Like
Oh,
it just got so cheap, it got so commoditized that it was not. It doesn't feel special at all anymore. And this game
yeah.
certainly did not feel special.
I hear people on all different podcasts and streams that I watch of like generally speaking within gaming, but people from all different audiences saying just we don't give a crap about Star Wars unless it's Andor. Everyone loves Andor, but
That's the best. Hmm.
everything else, people are just tired of it. So makes sense that this wouldn't have hit the way it might have previously.
Yep. And then I think people will be like, well, yeah, more proof that live service games don't work. And this is absolutely that for sure. But I mean, there
Yeah,
are I mean, this happened while Marvel Rivals was taking off. So, uh, you know,
but also we saw it happen there. So
yes,
you
true. Yeah, absolutely.
know.
I think really this is just any game. Every game is vying for attention. And whether this was a live service game or some alternate reality where this game is not a live service game, but it has a similar sort of tone. I don't think it finds the audience it needs to either way. Now, there's something to be said. Live service games need to find an audience to justify themselves, sure, but it's like everything is vying for your time and attention. And
Right.
this thing being a live service game, it's like, yeah, I mean, give or take that doesn't really seem to be the factor here. It was the fact that this is just not sparking joy in a lot of
Right,
people,
it's not
and
what
no one
people are
noticed it.
looking for. Yeah,
Yep,
was it Phil who said that we're not competing with Nintendo and PlayStation, we're competing with, like, streaming services and stuff because we time is time, and we're just competing for people's time.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Last Star Wars headline here. Respawn's next Star Wars game is confirmed for reveal. This is from Andy Robinson at VGC. The Star Wars strategy game from Studio Bit Reactor and Jedi Survivors
Oh.
Respawn will be revealed next month. It has been confirmed. On Saturday, April 19th, the pair will appear on stage at Star Wars Celebration in Tokyo, where they will offer the first look at their Star Wars turn based tactics game. Little is known about the game, which was announced alongside Respawn's Shooter and the third entry in the Star Wars Jedi franchise. The strategy game is being developed through a production collaboration with BitReactor, which is a new studio formed by veterans of XCOM and Civilization studio Firaxis Games. Respawn is producing the latest Star Wars strategy game, while BitReactor leads on the development of the title. Um, that shooter got canceled, by the way. And then Respawn, it will continue to work on this. Everyone was wondering about this. So like when that shooter got canceled, got kind of turned into something else, and then that got canceled. And everyone's like, what's going on with Respawn? It's like, well, Respawn has this still happening, but BitReactor's doing development on it. And then Respawn's got Apex Legends and Jedi, and then there's a small Skunkworks team from the director of Titanfall 1, and that's it.
Okay.
Meanwhile, this is happening. I'm interested in this. I'm still like, as much as Star Wars has become so cheap and commoditized. This is commodified, I should say, is actually the word I've been searching for in my brain this whole time. It is still. I'm like, oh, Star Wars strategy game. Here's the thing that works for me with Star Wars, Sean, that always will and always has. The ships look cool. The tech looks cool. I like that stuff. So if
Yeah.
you give me a strategy game that puts that stuff up in my eyeballs first, like I'm going to be probably at least curious and interested. So I want to see what this looks like.
What is Respawn doing on this project is what makes me scratch my head.
Yeah,
Because
very good question.
if you're saying it's a strategy game developed in part by veterans of XCOM and Civ and stuff, that makes a lot of sense to me. But why Respawn assisting on it? Just because I assume they have worked on Star Wars before? That's the only thing I think of.
That's like maybe not a bad line of thought, Sean. So what I hear, like when it comes to working with Disney on anything, and I bet this is true for a lot of IP holders, but maybe specifically Disney, is they're very you know, anal. They're very like, hey,
Yeah.
you have to get everything exactly right
Disney.
when you're
Yeah.
working with our IP, and especially like Star Wars was like especially kind of a problem with that. And maybe Respawn has the institutional knowledge now of after working on two Jedi games and continuing to work on a third, they know how to work with that team over at Disney, so they handle that stuff as like a
Mhm.
liaison between BitReactor and Disney. It's like
That's
you
what
tell
I'm
us what you want
thinking.
to do, we'll go figure out the way to make sure you can do it, and then we'll come back and report to you like, here's the reality of the situation, here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
That could be like the thinking here. The other part of it is like maybe this just started back when EA had the Star Wars license exclusively, and so this was like sort of the backdoor way into being
Oh,
able to get
sure.
BitReactor to make a Star Wars game. And they're like, well, let's just
Yeah.
part you up with Respawn. There's some producers over there that aren't busy. Let's like give them something to work on. Maybe
Yeah,
that was
but
the thinking.
yeah, it probably just is that, hey, executives liked what they saw with the Jedi games, and so
Yeah,
when it comes to making a new one, they're like, "Hey, these guys haven't figured out. Go get some help from these guys because they'll help you figure out the art the way we like it. They'll help you. I assume they have a team dedicated to helping out with this. Sure, it just feels like an odd fit, but now we talk it out. I can kind of see how it comes together.
yeah. People in chat are like, wait, is that third Jedi game confirmed? I'm pretty sure they've publicly stated that, but like right after that game, the second one came out. I heard it's like, yep, no, like they're already seeing the numbers. It's good enough. They want to do a third one. They are planning to do a third one. They have basically got a green light to do a third one. So, I mean, I'll confirm it if they haven't, but I'm pretty sure they've stated publicly that that third Jedi game is happening. It is just uh, that'll probably be it. That they probably won't do another one after that. They're going to close out the trilogy.
Trilogy makes sense.
Yep, it usually does. Okay, let's see here. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. Plenty more headlines to get into, including what's going on with People Can Fly and Metroid Prime 4 right after this. All right. New headline: People Could Fly has entered into an agreement with Sony Interactive Entertainment on production of a game using Sony IP, codenamed Project Delta. This is from People Can Fly's investor report. So let's read through it. The management board of PCF Group SA, with its registered office in Warsaw, hereby informs that on March 13th, 2025, the company entered into a production agreement with Sony Interactive Entertainment LLC, with its registered office in San Mateo, blah, 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 regarding cooperation in the production of a prototype of a new game codenamed Project Delta, based on intellectual property rights belonging to that publisher. So let's stop there, Shawn. I think this headline's going to go around, and people are going to be like, People Can Fly are working on a Sony IP. They're taking a Sony IP that's old, and they're making a new version of that. And that's not necessarily what this says, right? This says they are working on a game based on intellectual property rights belonging to the publisher. So the IP belongs to Sony,
Right.
but it's not necessarily an existing Sony IP, although it could be. I guess
Oh,
I
so
would
you're
ask,
saying it could be an original IP,
could be
but
original
Sony
IP
owns the
owned
original
by
IP.
Sony.
Oh,
Exactly.
okay, I
Yes.
gotcha.
Right. So, I mean, then we don't know that. It could be something that does exist. So let's, open up that can of worms. What should, and People Could Fly is what's the dick fart game? What it was
What?
That's the game where they had all the fun swear words, where they would like kick you and stuff. The people come, yeah, Knack 3. No, it's not Knack 3, chat. What should People Could Fly work on, like, in your opinion? Oh,
What does
Bulletstorm. There we go.
what does People Can
Bulletstorm.
Fly do outside Bulletstorm?
I mean, they've did that Square Enix Destiny like that Destiny Light, I suppose. What was it called? This one's not called Bulletstorm. It's that one where they
Outriders.
Outriders. Yes, thank you.
Oh,
And they yes. Wow.
whoa.
Did it just like flood into your brain? Do you remember in
Yeah,
Outriders?
suddenly, like 4 years ago, just flew by my eyes.
That was like,
holy cow.
man, Mount Rushmore of like forgotten pandemic games. I
Yeah.
think that one should go up there. I think.
Holy crap.
So and that one maybe most notable for Square Enix never saying how well it sold, because if it reached a certain threshold, they'd have to pay People Can Fly
Wasn't
more
that the
money.
one where 1 month before it came out, they were like, "Oh, by the way, it's in Game Pass. Don't worry,
Yes.
you don't have
Yeah.
to buy it. It's in Game Pass."
Yes, that was a last minute Game Pass thing, and that's why I think if anyone remembers it, it's because of that. So,
So yeah, I've high confidence in this studio making a new.
I'm getting the impression not a fan of Outriders.
Does anyone have anything to say about Outriders? I didn't play it, Jeff.
I think it's one of those ones where it's like there's some people like, no, I played a ton of that. That was fine. But I don't know. People Can Fly has some talent, and like they know how to make a shooting game fun.
Okay.
I think my assumption here would be like, okay, so they're going to work on something along those lines for Sony, but I don't know. If we're trying to figure out what existing IP they make sense for, I don't necessarily just jump to one. People are saying, I think people are like, want to see Jumping Flash. Sure, everybody, yeah, a new Jumping Flash from People Can Fly.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Okay, so they've worked on Bulletstorm. I brought up their Wikipedia so I could see this. Outriders, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gears of War. They've worked with Microsoft on various Gears of War things.
I think they were like very closely like tied to Gears of War for quite some time.
Yeah,
And
they're like
did
tied.
they
have a
do
relationship.
Judgment?
They have a relationship with Epic. So yeah, they co-developed Judgment. Apparently they're working on E-Day. Or
Yeah,
like
it
as
wouldn't surprise
support.
me.
That's what's listed on Wikipedia, at least.
Yeah, I mean that. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I think that if you're making a game like that, you want people who have familiarity with it to help come support it. They still have that.
It seems like that vibe of game is sort of their wheelhouse. So what does that say about something that they would be helping Sony with?
I mean, that Killzone trailer, the bullshot trailer, just actually make that. Now with People Can Fly responsible for it. I don't know. In fact, I guess they don't have to do something like Bulletstorm or Gears of War.
They don't have to. They do something wildly different. Yeah.
Do you think, does the term Project Delta like give you any insight? I guess what makes me think of is SOCOM. Makes me think of SOCOM.
Well,
what?
Hang on. We summoned Jan.
Jan makes me think of SOCOM.
They have a bunch of projects announced. Delta is this one with Sony. Echo is one with Krafton. And then they
Okay.
also have Bison, Bifrost, and Victoria. So
Huh.
maybe these are hints at stuff. Because when I hear Krafton, I think Echo. I do think like, military shooter or
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah, definitely.
maybe SOCOM. Who
Yeah.
knows?
And then Cyrus Raven in chat says odds of this being live service. Not zero, but not. I don't think it's a guaranteed either.
If it depends on when this was signed, because
Very good point.
Sony has learned some lessons about live service, and I think if something makes a lot of sense for it to be that kind of game, they'll do it. But I think they've learned about pushing live service onto series that don't necessarily need it.
Yeah. Let's read some of this other like jargon they put in here. The production agreement provides that work on the product will be carried out in the so-called work for hire model. For example, work performed by a company as a developer on behalf of and for the publisher, in
Mhm.
return for which the company will receive an agreed remuneration from the publisher. So basically, work for hire. They're a contract company
Yeah,
being
contract.
hired to like work on this IP. In accordance with the production agreement, work on the product will be divided into stages or milestones. Detailed terms of cooperation between the parties regarding the implementation and payment for subsequent stages and new milestones have been specified in the annex to the production agreement. The scope and provisions of the production agreement do not differ substantially from the provisions of production agreements typically concluded for such projects. I think they're just saying this is in line with the kind of thing we've done before.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are other work. So I mean, maybe this is them coming in and just kind of doing what they do on the Gears of War series for PlayStation, as you suggested earlier. So yeah, I don't know. Part of me is like, maybe it is just a new IP, and
It
this
could
is
just
like,
be a new IP.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then that would,
Especially if this did come out of the era, at least, of Sony coming up with like, half a dozen new IPs in order to push the live service stuff. Maybe this is a remnant of that or something. Who knows?
right, yeah, or like something where it was like there was a live service game approved for one developer, and they're like, well, let's take some of that stuff and work like see if we can bring a team maybe to make a campaign, a single player campaign,
Yeah.
and so we're going to hire you to do that. While this team tries to figure out what they're doing with the live service that we still like. We're speculating here, but something along those lines would
Right.
not shock me.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. I'm saying Mike because when I think
Dang.
let me explain. When I think
Because
of
we're
Metro,
getting fun of Mike so much in this
yes,
segment.
I very much associate Metroid Prime 4 with my argument with Mike about whether or not this
Yep.
game is going
We'll
to
get
be
into that. We'll get into that.
Switch 2 game or not. So
Let's
Metroid
get
Prime,
the boring part out of the way first.
Metroid Prime 4 will potentially make quite the splash at the Switch 2 Direct. This is from Jim Norman at Nintendo Life. If you could believe it, we are a little over 2 weeks out from the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. While we're already waiting for more news from Nintendo's next console, some folks believe they already have an inkling of one of the game's showcase key players. That would be Metroid Prime 4. It's according to Kiwi Talks podcast host Reese Riley, who recently took to Blue Sky with a heavy hint that Metroid Prime 4 Beyond will be making quite the splash at the Switch 2 Direct. Nintendo and Retro were keeping their cards close to their chest with Metroid Prime 4 for this exact moment, Riley teased. The true unveiling will blow everything else in the Direct out of the water. In the same thread on Twitter, the Kiwi Talks host said he was 90% certain that Prime 4 will be in the showcase, though he clarified that Nintendo are constantly tweaking Directs right down to the last minute, leaving himself a little bit of wiggle room. I know that move. Yeah, hey, okay. Metroid Prime 4 at this point just like needs to be in that Direct, right? Like, I mean, they can't start talking about the Switch 2 so much that before they give us information about what's happening with this game. So what does that look like to you?
So first of all, someone in Twitch chat said the word resistance, which I completely forgot about when talking about the last topic. But yeah, resistance would make sense there as well.
Yeah, resistance kills down for sure.
Everyone forgot about resistance.
Yes.
Second, Mike Minotti, that stupid SOB. Finally, we get to dance on his grave, Jeff. Can you believe that guy thought that this game would only release on a Switch 2 when it's clearly releasing on a Switch 1 as well? Confirmed.
I can't believe it because he's just that dumb.
He's just an idiot. No, yeah, this makes a ton of sense for them to talk about as if it were a Switch 2 game.
Right.
regardless of how it's releasing. You want to release on Switch 1 because Metroid is a niche series and you want to sell to as many people as possible. And 100 and what are we up to now? 40 million units. Boy, that's a great audience to sell, to potentially sell a niche game to. But then also, to Mike's credit, the point he was always trying to make here, this is a hardcore audience game. The people picking up a Switch 2 right from the get-go are going to be the hardcore audience. It does make sense to at least market this game to those people, regardless of how it originally releases.
Yeah.
I guess how I'm thinking of it at this point is, do we still, how do we think this is going to be handled in relation to the Switch 2? Because if it's
Yeah.
going to be in that direct, you assume it's not going to be just a Switch 1 game that they talk about during the Switch 2 direct. It could be, but you'd think there would be
You
more,
assume it
right?
wouldn't be. So yeah, my here's the sense I'm getting now, Shawn, is this will be the poster child for here's the best case scenario for a Switch 1 game running on Switch 2. Like we are going to build in
Oh,
like the best case scenario of like what that can look like. So all the improvements that could happen will happen in this game. But this game will not necessarily be in a box that says Switch 2. In maybe it
right.
will. They could have like, oh, there's two different versions of it, like we've gotten from the Zelda games before that have been cross-gen, right? There's
Twice now, yeah.
the GameCube and the Wii version, and then the Wii U and the Switch version. And those
Yeah.
are two different versions of the game. I don't think they're going to do that with Metroid Prime 4, although of course they still could. I think this will be a backward compatibility game that takes advantage of whatever stuff they've built into this console to, in certain circumstances, make those games run and look as good as possible.
Right, because my initial thought with this was always that Prime 4 will run with dynamic resolution, and if you're playing on Switch
Yes.
1, that'll hover around 720p, and if you're playing on Switch 2, it's a locked 1080p. Same with the frame rate, they've been very good about this with Retro with Prime 1 remastered, runs extremely well. We've heard whispers on the wind that this is based on that tech. And so I would not be
Mhm.
surprised if it's targeting 1080p 60 and runs at very good 60. But then, the 60 FPS is also locked on Switch 2. And maybe you get a few dips here and there on Switch 1. It's that kind of thing. It's just never felt like Nintendo's MO to do patches like that radically overhaul a Switch 1 game for Switch 2. And they've done unexpected things before. The Switch 1 did a good amount of unexpected stuff for
Yeah.
Nintendo. So maybe this is just where they finally start doing that and they do something like a smart delivery. I think all the time about how Microsoft kind of nailed that one. There's reasons you would want to run the Xbox One X version on a series console, but usually it just gives you the best version of the game for the hardware that you own. And so I think if Nintendo did something like that, and now's the time to unveil that, that would be really cool. But
Sure.
yeah, it feels like one extreme or the other. Either it is just the Switch 2 runs the game better and they are going to talk about that, or maybe you do get Switch 2 box, especially if, there's a difference between them. A Switch 2 box has like a white logo with red font or something like that. Two boxes of Metroid Prime 4 on retail shelves, as much as those still exist. Maybe there's a strategy to that as well, right?
Yeah, there could be. Yeah, and like positioning this as a launch game for the Switch 2 for that audience. You're right. That is something that could be very appealing to Nintendo to give that chance the best chance to succeed. They've spent a long time making it, so this it got to be one of the more expensive games Nintendo's ever made. North American developers working on it for years after originally partnering with a team at Bandai Namco, was it? I can't
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
exactly. And that getting scrapped or restarting development, and then so yeah, it's good. Maybe it's something they're like, we actually do want to recoup investment on this one and really give it a chance to have the breakout hit that the Switch has provided for so many other franchises that Metroid's only kind of gotten from the 2D game Metroid Dread. So
Right.
we'll see. But at this point, I mean, this thing is going to be linked to the Switch 2 in some way because
If nothing else, just us talking about how happy we're going to be to play this on the Switch too.
Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of other creators are going to be feeling the same way, telling their audience the same thing, and that'll just trickle on out to the mainstream.
And they've just run out of time otherwise because it's like, the
Yeah.
Switch 2 is early next month, 2 weeks. There's nothing happening
2
with
weeks we're
Metroid.
getting that direct. Hell yeah.
Yep, nothing happened with Metroid Prime 4 between now and then. So when we hear about this game, it will probably be in conjunction with that system, and that will definitely mean something when Nintendo does that. All right. Xbox and EA have reportedly been sniffing around Ubisoft's IP. This is from Sammy Baker at Push Square. Microsoft has spent close to $100 billion on historically third-party publishers and developers over the past few years, but now it's been sniffing around Ubisoft's intellectual property as well. A disgruntled shareholder on the embattled French firm recently accused the company of failing to disclose, quote, discussions between Microsoft, EA, and others that are interested in acquiring IPs from Ubisoft. Jiraj Krupa, the irritated investor in question, alleged that the conversation were shared in a restricted article published by business investment platform Merger Market, and that neither shareholders nor the public were informed. Ubisoft has since issued a statement to IGN revealing that it continues to review various strategic and capitalistic options going forward. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we always say about like, hey, these companies are talking to each other. Microsoft is having a conversation about, acquiring this company, or Ubisoft showed up to EA one day and say, hey, would you like to acquire us? And something that, happened years and years ago. And it was, yeah, those conversations happen all the time. And Yves Guillemot showing up and being like, hey, Phil Spencer, can I take you to lunch? He doesn't actually have to disclose what they talk about at those lunches. It has to reach like a certain threshold for it to become like, oh, we're going to present this to investors. And once they do that, they have to like disclose it publicly. Sure. But conversations like this happen all the time. And so the idea that it's like, oh, they need to make that public. Hey, is Nico down here? Hi, Nico.
Nico Mumu?
Yeah, Nico Mumu, come
Aww.
everybody. And I just unplugged my headphones trying to play with my cat. So let me plug that back in real quick. Yeah, I think that this is something they probably have discussed. Whether or not this is a likely result of Ubisoft's current afflictions, I don't know. I think it's probably certainly on the table. What do you think, Shawn?
So first of all, before anyone says anything, I would like to point out I was not laughing at that innocent person's name. I'm laughing at your white ass pronouncing it like Chris Pratt stomping tupas in the arcade.
Jiraj, Krupas.
That person deserves better, but you know what? That's where we're getting at, Jeff Grubb.
That's the best I can do. Oh man.
It feels weird to say about a company as big as Ubisoft, but it kind of wouldn't surprise me if they're looking to offload kind of anything they can that they're not using. And then Xbox, they're looking to get all the IP they can so that they can have quarters like they're going to have here in the spring, and then presumably in the fall as well, to just constantly pump out games. That's a good purr. That's a good purr, Nico.
Good boy.
Yeah. I don't know what more to think about this other than companies sure do be tossing around a bunch of money with other companies nowadays.
Yeah, and it's I think my perspective on this, Shawn, would be like, does this feel like a fifth or sixth best option for Ubisoft? Like, are they down so bad that they're like, hey, originally we were going to try to stay in charge of the company, and that meant maybe we'll have a couple of successful video games. So, but like, that Star Wars game is coming and Assassin's Creed is coming. All these are going to hit and we're going to be fine. Okay, well, that didn't work. All right, well, let's see. Can we get Tencent to like just give us some money and maybe take the company private? It's like, that's not ideal, but maybe we could do that. And it's like, oh, that's not going to work. Should we sell it off for parts? And it's like, oh, okay, that's where you're at now, huh? You're so desperate to stay in charge of Ubisoft that you're like, let's sell off the things that make the company valuable. I think that the fact that this is maybe even being discussed is a pretty poor sign for the future outlook of Ubisoft as a publisher, a sentence that doesn't really surprise anyone that listens to this show, right?
No, yeah, it's like I said, it's weird to think about with Ubisoft and how much we associate with them, but we also look at their output and what it's been, and the way they treat their franchises, which is sometimes just really not great. I ain't love the way that Prince of Persia was handled in general with some of the marketing beats and everything like that, and it was exclusive to Ubisoft Connect or whatever for a while there. Yeah, I just don't have great faith in Ubisoft right now, and yeah, maybe some of the people over there don't as well, and so that's why we're seeing stuff like this happening, over coffee or however how they do it. I was
Right.
gonna say over drinks, but that's not, they're not Bandai Namco.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, that'd be too cool for them.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I think that Ubisoft maybe. I mean, like, what they're not going to sell Assassin's Creed, right?
no,
That's the one where they seem like that's Ubisoft's bread and butter, and maybe just their butter now because they're selling
that
off the
is what I was
bread.
thinking. Yeah, what would it be?
I
Uh,
mean, Splinter
Splinter
Cell.
Cell. Yeah, it seems like the most likely one to me.
I mean, if I'm Xbox, I could do something with Splinter Cell.
Yeah, like, they do have. I was gonna say they have Perfect Dark, but yeah, they could use like a pure stealth game, absolutely. And I have confidence that they have studios who could do something fun with that. So that feels like a natural fit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's once Perfect Dark gets done, like just hiring Crystal Dynamics to come in and work on a Splinter Cell game is not like the craziest thing in the world to me. So, uh, yeah, I mean, reportedly Ubisoft's still working on a Splinter Cell remake, so who knows? Yeah, I mean, beyond that, a lot of Tom Clancy stuff outside of Splinter Cell. Maybe sell off the whole Tom Clancy brand. I guess I don't know. It's a weird thing. I bet that the reason that this is not presented to investors is Ubisoft themselves doesn't know what this looks like. Doesn't really. They're like, well, we're sure the conversations have started, but we don't really know like what number or which IP specifically would even make sense. So probably a long ways off from something like this actually becoming a finalized deal that results in some IP spinning off from this
Right.
publisher.
Yeah.
All right. Last headline here. Naughty Dog's Intergalactic rumored to be inspired by From Software's most popular game.
Oh no.
Um, this is from Alex Coe. Is the Game Reactor? I can't remember where this came from. One of the biggest reveals of last December's The Game Awards was the announcement of Naughty Dog's latest project, Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, which was a big departure from the studio's past works that were more grounded. However, a new rumor has surfaced stating that Intergalactic's inspiration comes from an unlikely source and one that's significantly different from the studio's past games. In the latest MinMax episode, founder Ben Hansen, whoever that is,
Hi, Ben.
mentioned that he's heard Intergalactic has been compared to Elden Ring, arguably From Software's most popular game, which has sold millions of copies and won multiple Game of the Year awards. MinMax's Ben Hansen said, "I've heard Naughty Dog's next game is very inspired by a game with a lot of player freedom, Elden Ring. And that is what it's been compared to. It's taking place on one planet, uncovering the history of this world, and you can kind of see a little bit where they might be going with that. Yeah, I think this is something we've heard suggestions of, or hints, or gestures toward in the past. Especially, I think coming out of Last of Us Part Two, and then coming out of like Elden Ring. I think we heard from people at Naughty Dog, including Neil Druckmann. It's like, hey, we were inspired by that, and like we loved making the games the way we used to make them, but now we're thinking maybe we want to try to do it this way. This seems to work as well. I think maybe I'm a little surprised that they are already enacting that with something like Intergalactic. What do you think that looks like? Do you think this is something that can work for a studio like Naughty Dog?
This is not where I would have expected them to draw inspiration from, and so I'm a little worried because that's not what I thought Intergalactic would be. It's called Intergalactic, so I assume, there'd be planet hopping, of course.
Right.
But uh look, I'm not a huge Last of Us fan, but I do generally like Naughty Dog stuff. I really enjoyed every Uncharted game. I think those games are at their best when it is more linear and where it is more set piece driven. And so hearing that this is going to be more about player freedom, player choice, and presumably that means some semblance of an open world, that's not what I want to hear about right now, because I think games should be smaller in scope personally.
Sure.
Now, if anyone was going to pull it off, Naughty Dog's one of those sort of exception to the rule companies where, again, even if I didn't like their most recent game, there's something there. There is a quality, a bar of quality that Naughty Dog has kind of always had, that I do have faith that they could at least do something interesting with it. I'm just not sure if that's going to be what I want out of this game.
Yeah. I get what they are might be going for here, which is like that sense of player driven like exploration and discovery is magical when it works. And if there's a way to replicate that without going full Elden Ring, full Souls game, full open world, I think they will probably try to stumble upon that. But I think you kind of need to like just turn over some of the autonomy to the player and say, okay, we have built this place for you to explore. Now it's on you to sort of bump up into these systems and find ways to unlock the fun for yourself. That's probably what I think. I mean, honestly, and I think trying to remember how they phrased it, I think that's kind of what they were saying originally when this idea of they've been inspired by Elden Ring and maybe Breath of the Wild before that, and they wanted to take some of those feelings and apply it to their games. I do think that you're right that this is a scary proposition for a lot of fans because for as much as I'm someone that's like, hey, give me an open world, I do want to have that autonomy. I want to, I don't care. Like, I'm fighting with Mike right now about mods in that rumored remake of Oblivion. And for me, it's like, it's all about let, let me decide how I'm going to have fun. That's the whole point of those games.
I'm in the
You
middle of that, by the way.
yeah,
I don't like content mods by like graphical mods.
yeah, I'm like, like, you played the campaign. What are you, a friggin' nerd? It's like, no, I want to just explore this world on my own terms. And so there are a lot of people out there like me that feel that way. That's why stuff like Elden Ring has been so successful. Although Elden Ring gives you a lot of ways to access its fun. I think getting back to your point that this is Naughty Dog, they are the exception to the rule. And I think the reason they're the exception to the rule is they will provide different pathways toward the fun. They will if you are someone that comes to their games for that linear experience, if you stick to the story, I bet you're going to mostly get that feeling. And then if you
Yeah.
want to veer off, they will provide a little bit of autonomous exploration that can belong to the player that you can author on your own. And that sounds pretty good to me as someone who doesn't usually jive with Naughty Dog.
Yeah, I haven't seen or heard this yet, so I'm still processing everything from the quote. And yeah, it's taking place on one planet, so that presumably means that there wouldn't be the planet hopping that like
I
the
assume that as well.
what I thought would be in this game is instead going to be spread out over something on one planet, or maybe it is a more linear experience that has the open segments that they've done in the past, like with
Yeah.
Uncharted 4. It's just that comparison, like I said, just confuses me a little bit. And someone in chat does point out that it could be more of this isn't an official source, or not official source. This doesn't
It's
come
just Ben
from official.
Hansen.
It's just Van Hansen. Who cares? It's not official marketing, but like when dev interviews are eventually conducted on the subject matter, maybe that could be a marketing beat that they have been like told, like, hey, this game is a little more open, so it's okay if you compare it to Elden Ring.
Sure. Yes, that's a
I
good
get where
point.
I
There
get
should
where
be in
that
a deck
person's coming
somewhere.
from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like something like a marketer is just like, what's the word cloud of things that gamers want to hear right now? You're absolutely right. It could be that simple.
Yeah.
I think that Last of Us Part Two, its strength for me was that combat had some emergent qualities to it where you can like, I have an idea about how to solve this problem in front of me. You could try that idea, and the game would react to that. I think that they might be going like, let's take that feeling, that kernel, and just maybe apply it more broadly to the gameplay as a whole across the like everything you're doing, and to facilitate that maybe larger open zones. It's a Sonic Frontiers. We're getting the Sonic
It's
Frontiers.
just like Sonic Frontiers,
It's a
everybody's
Sonic
favorite
Frontiers
game.
All right, that does it for the headlines. There's a poll question that we had ready to go from last week. What does the F in Silent Hill F stand for? Is it Forte, parentheses not will, F-stop, Fortnite, or Fuddy Duddy? 12% says it stands for F-stop, so some sort of camera-related gameplay. 21% said Forte, not will, so something to do with music. 24% said Fortnite, so an Epic Games clone, and then 44% said Fuddy Duddy. There you go.
Is it not the F from math, whoever that's called?
Yeah, okay, could be the F from math.
You know,
Factorial?
the titular math F.
Is
Right?
the math F factorial? I don't know.
I do not remember.
I stopped paying attention to math once it got hard for me, which was right around there. All right. We have a new poll question. We'll get to that here in a second while we get that set up. Shawn McDowell, what do you have going on?
I have a show right after this. If you're watching live, me and Nikki are going to be hanging out for GB Kids. I believe they are bringing games from the publisher that I remember. Pangea
Pangea
Software
Software,
Games
yeah.
is what we planned on. I hope Nikki remembered to set all that up. I didn't tell them to because that's GB Kids. We fly by a sweet seat of our pants. And then
Nikki always
after
has those games installed. I think you're fine.
that, well, I don't know about that one, Jeff. I don't know about that after last week. But after GB Kids, of course, we have GB Boomers over on Records
That's
Roulette,
right.
where Dan's gonna be playing some Via Pinata. So yeah, make sure to stay tuned if you're watching live. And if you're not watching live, hey, check it out on YouTube later, where we'll have the VODs for you.
Excellent. New poll question. Will you be excited if Naughty Dog's next game, Intergalactic, is more like Elden Ring? Yes or no? I am very curious to see the results for this. I really am expecting most people to
I
say no.
appreciate Ben just like lobbing a headline up for us, you know,
Uh-huh.
and we're just knocking out of the park on that one.
That's fine. Helps us out on a Monday. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. That does it for that. Other things happening on the website this week. Bombcast is back tomorrow. On Wednesday, Blight Club's Lightning Round comes to a close, potentially, with Dan Reichert playing E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
See, that is so funny because we can make that last exactly as long as we want to.
We can.
Depending on how much info you give him.
That's right. Yeah.
Does he have the instruction manual?
I did not send him the instruction manual.
He's cooked.
That's exactly right. You kind of can't play that game without the instruction manual.
He's gonna have to be so nice to you for the next week or two.
I agree.
Great.
This is a good point. And so, like, to give him permission to like look up the instruction manual, that will be. We're gonna hold that.
Look, I'll get involved in the proceedings of Blight Club, of course. But if someone, else on the show were to suggest that maybe the only information he gets is hints from you and Mike, maybe that would make for good content.
I think you might be onto something there. It's gonna be incredible. I mean, you got to see his costume first and foremost. Everybody, what is he gonna dress as? It's impossible to guess.
He did put a picture of it out on Blue Sky, a little hint of it, by the way.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
Also, Dan is apparently pooping in the other room. So hi, Dan, in the other room.
Hi, Dan. Good job pooping. All right. In addition to that, Grubb's gimmicks will happen. I might play Death Stranding. I'm thinking about that as we get ready for Death Stranding 2. But I also want to play Thug Pro. I haven't done that.
What if you played Thug Pro?
What if we just like hung out and played Thug Pro?
That sounds like it would be a fun time.
That might happen, and we can open that room up a little bit, and people can just come hang out.
Let's do that Friday.
This Friday, everybody, we're playing Thug Pro for Unprofessional Fridays. This has been decided on a meeting a long time ago. All right, so Death Stranding probably for Grubb's gimmicks, everybody, on Wednesday.
All right. Well, you have fun with that.
I will do my best. In the meantime, Shawn McDowell, thank you for hanging out with me and talk about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Jeff.
Thank you all for watching and listening. Thanks to Jan for producing. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.